I'd been writing for a small horror website for a few months. Nothing fancy, but it got enough traffic to warrant a decent following, and the income from the ads kept the site afloat. My boss asked me to do a piece on contemporary writing, so I decided to interview my favorite author about his upcoming book. I won't say his name. You definitely know him. He's lowbrow and under the radar, but his novellas have gained him a cult following. Avid fans of his are a bit extreme. They follow him everywhere. I did some research and found out my favorite author didn't like interviews. If he did them, they were only over the phone. A few photos of him existed online, but nothing from the past 10 years. I knew getting a hold of him would be impossible, so I asked a friend in publishing to do some digging. Turns out my favorite author frequented a coffee shop in his tiny East Coast town. If I could get there in the early morning hours and beg for an interview, maybe he'd do it. It took about 12 hours of driving to reach the town. I rented a small bed and breakfast close to the cafe. I went to bed early, woke up at 6 a.m., and waited at a corner table in the shop for the author to arrive. It was around 8 a.m. when I noticed him shuffle in. He wore a long beard, a gray hoodie, and torn jeans. An eccentrically dressed man and woman trailed him. I figured these two were his fans because they had the same long hair and dark clothes. The man wore a scraggly beard and lip piercings. The woman sported dark lipstick and eyeliner. I wanted to approach the author and ask him for an interview, but I knew his companions wouldn't let me get close. Fans of his were notorious for their fierce dedication. If they felt an interaction might get in the way of his writing, they'd pounce. I waited until the author had ordered his drink and sat down at a table near the back. When his fans had reached the counter to order their own drinks, I made my move. "Excuse me." The author's worn face met mine. "My name's Avery. I write for an online horror magazine. I was hoping to interview you about your upcoming book." The author bit his lip and turned to the man and woman at the counter. Thankfully, their backs were turned toward us. "I understand you're extremely busy, but if you'd..." Before I could get in another word, he grabbed my arm. "Meet me down the road at 7 p.m. tonight. Leave, now, before they see you." He let go, and I struggled to rationalize his words. The fear in his eyes told me to obey his request. I stepped back and returned to my table. It was perfect timing. The two fans snatched their drinks and sat down on either side of the author, hemming him in. They had no idea I was ever there. It was 6:59 p.m. when I turned my car onto the vacant road and waited. It was dark out, and most of the stores, including the coffee shop, were closed. I glanced at my phone and waited in the uncomfortable silence. Had I heard him right? Had he really told me to meet here? Or was I hallucinating? Just as I started to lose hope, a slight tapping hit my window. I swung my gaze, startled, and saw a familiar face peering at me. "Can I come in?" The author and I maneuvered down several more streets until we reached a dead end, surrounded by forest. "This is good," he said finally. I set the car in park and listened to the engine's idle hum. I couldn't believe that this legendary writer was sitting next to me. He seemed stressed and anxious. He continually checked over his shoulder in the rearview mirror. He was hysterical, like someone was following him. "I don't have much time. Remind me your name again?" "Avery," I replied. "That's a good name. Listen to me, Avery. Everything you know about me is a lie. My readers think I'm a master of horror. But the truth is, I don't write any of my novellas." My brow furrowed in confusion. "The truth is, He swallowed. I get my words from them. He motioned to the driver's side window and I looked out. Instantly, my eyes were assaulted with curious demonic shapes. Some were hunched over and decorated in lizard-like frills. Others had long, spindly arms and webbed hands that made sucking noises when they moved. Others were so exotic and bizarre it was impossible to describe. I made a deal years ago. The author glanced down, ashamed. They've given me terrifying ideas. Whenever I sit down to type, the words flow effortlessly. But these stories aren't mine. A creature with shriveled wings settled on a twisted tree branch next to the car. It squawked and vomited a stream of green bile. Over the years, I've tried to break free, tried to get someone to help me, but all my attempts to escape have caused me pain. The author lifted the sleeve of his jacket to reveal dozens of horrendous scars. They were like ancient hieroglyphics etched into his arm like art. I pay my most dedicated fans to stick with me, make sure nothing too serious happens. Would you be willing to help me? I glanced out at the strange shapes. A fog had come in slowly, hiding the street and nearby trees. It was like we were lost on the edges of the earth, nearing the precipice of hell. If you can help me, Avery, I'd really appreciate it. I dropped the author back off at the coffee shop, but before he left, he gave me an incredible interview. It was full of dark, twisted details. It was exactly the content I needed for my website. I submitted the article to my boss. He gave me a stellar review and announced that it should be live next week. But all that doesn't matter because after I had agreed to help my favorite author, he handed me a worn object in the shape of a skull and told me to take it home and hide it someplace safe. Don't let anyone see it. I did. Only problem is, I'm starting to think that this object is what's attracting these abominable beasts. Now, everywhere I look, I see grotesque shapes following me. On my way home from work, to the grocery store, to university. And every time I see them, they get closer.